1973, a grad student at Stanford University Medical School first had the idea to create rDNA, or man-made DNA. Over the next 9 years, the idea was researched and our collective understanding of the idea was improved. In 1982, the first GMO was approved by the FDA and appeared on the market. Humulin, a form of insulin synthesized by E. coli bacteria. From this, we created the Flavor Saver tomato, a redder, more flavorful tomato that also has a longer shelf life. From this, the most common GMO today was created, crops resistant to Bt, to common pesticides through the use of Bt. As you can see, this GMO has become exponentially more popular, with only a handful of states using it in 2002, and over 30 in 2012, to over 40 today. Although this was a monumental scientific leap, information regarding GMOs rarely got the scientific community, and there was little public reaction. This does not mean that GMOs were irrelevant. Humans have been genetically modifying our crops since the birth of our civilized species by wide-scale selective farming of crops suited to our needs. We force the crops to undergo artificial evolution. However, GMOs are a safe way to massively improve both the speed and accuracy of this process, opening the door for production of massive amounts of cheap, nutrient-rich food. Recently, general scientific awareness of the public has grown large enough for people to understand that there are GMOs in our food, but not actually what they are, and so people blindly fear them, attempting to pass legislation against them, specifically in highly developed areas such as Europe, China, Japan, and the US. Since the creation of the first GMO, GMOs have grown more and more prominent in the global spectacle. However, nothing more than the surface of what a GMO truly is ever discussed. As one of the most preeminent scientists in the field, Matt McClain, once said, "I am deeply troubled by the fact that the public GMO debate in Europe is completely detached from the scientific evidence accumulated over the last 30 years. This is the root of the issue I am here to discuss. Despite the overwhelming scientific evidence presented considering the safety of GMOs, we still feel the need to discuss federally the health effects as if it is unknown, and then use this confusion and fear to pass legislation against GMOs, specifically mandatory labeling of GMOs. One point I think that is very important to make is that there is no scientific debate regarding the safety of common pesticide-resistant, specifically Bt products. We've conducted over 600 studies into this fact, and they've all found that GMOs are in fact safe. And this is just an excerpt of a few of the studies from some of our most prestigious scientific organizations, and every single one of these has found that GMOs are not dangerous, and there is no reason to fear them. Mandatory GMO labeling, while appearing benign, is a fundamental issue facing agriculture in the 21st century. Currently, 64 countries enforce GMO labeling, including countries like Japan, China, and 28 countries in the European Union. Although anti-GMO legislation is not yet able to be passed in the United States, polls indicate strong support for labeling GMO foods. One recent poll found 93% of respondents support mandatory labeling. This means that this is only a short matter of time before the legislation is passed, but why is this such an issue? One of the fundamental issues is that it is not immediately clear why we would not require GMO labeling. It improves clarity in our food, which is very relevant considering the current outcry against inhuman slaughter, specifically regarding our treatment of cattle, pigs, and chickens, and lack of proper hygiene in our agriculture. Additionally, there are no clear drawbacks. However, the drawbacks are very real. By enforcing GMO labeling, we would force U.S. producers to segregate crops before being able to claim that food products are GM-free, which would be very difficult and costly. Additionally, if products had a massive label on them stating that they had a GMO, people would be much more likely to avoid them on impulse. These factors combined would act as a massive economic disincentive against GMOs, specifically since 57% of U.S. adults believe that GMOs are unsafe to eat, and 67% believe that we are not clear on what GMO's effect on health effects are, although we clearly are. Now, this wouldn't really matter if GMOs were nothing but a cash grab gimmick by the corporations which put the rest of us at dangers, as 63% of people believe, compared to 12% of people with a strong scientific background. However, GMOs are far more than that. GMOs are the future of food, a safe, scientific, economically viable solution to lack of food. Malnourishment and famine are two massively relevant issues on the global scale right now, and GMOs has the potential to solve both of those. And this chart is just a quick look at which countries currently face hunger, and as you can see, most of the world has at least a small portion of people which don't have food security, and many countries, specifically African countries, have a large portion of their population who do not have food security. The first issue that GMOs can address is malnutrition, as it is where GMOs are most clearly beneficial. Golden rice is the exemplary model of this. For removing specific genes from the rice and inserting rDNA designed to cause the rice to absorb yellow antigens, the rice is infused with a minuscule amount of vitamin A. But this adds up, as just 2 cups of golden rice a day can provide an adult with their daily required amount. This does not affect the rice in any other way, does not add any other positive or negative effects, but it does almost double or even triple in many developing countries people's intake of vitamin A, which is very important as vitamin A deficiency is one of the largest illnesses in the world, an deficiency which impacts 190 million people and kills approximately 700,000 children a year. And although this is the literal gold standard for what a malnutrition targeted GMO should look like, golden rice is not the only GMO designed for human welfare rather than economic success. There are many other GMOs designed to provide nutrients, such as soybeans with vitamin E and carrots with iron in corn. Additionally, we have produced crops with vaccines important to them, such as bananas that carry hepatitis B vaccine. Edible vaccines are likely to overcome the hurdles posed by traditional vaccines, as they can be delivered without needles, do not require refrigeration, and can be made cheaply right in the area where they will be delivered. Although vaccinative and micronutrient hosting GMOs are incredibly important, it is unfair to say they represent the majority of GMOs. In fact, over 99% of GMO acreage is engineered by chemical companies to tolerate heavy herbicide and or glyphosate and or produce insecticide. However, these GMOs are far from bad. As stated earlier, they have no incidental health effects. Additionally, these GMOs massively increase productivity, specifically in developing countries such as India, where production can increase as much as 60%. And although this is not as high in the US, as pesticide is not as effective since we have fewer pests, it can still increase production by upwards of 10%. And this is a chart of the production. If we did not create GMOs, we could have very easily plateaued our production around here, which would lead to greater food deficiencies in our modern world. However, GMO products is the reason we have the potential to increase our food supply by this much. So, GMOs do not harm people, provide micronutrients and vaccines to impoverish people, and globally cheapen the price of food. However, the developed world is still looking to place legislation against GMOs, economically disincentivizing them. In the US itself, this legislation seems almost inevitable, as 93% of Americans support it, and Vermont has already passed laws requiring GM labeling. However, the only reason because of this is because people do not understand what a GMO is, and so blanketly fear them. The solution is simple. If we increase our education on what scientifically a GMO is, we will help people understand what they are, and so not have a reason to fear them, because they will understand the difference between mixing a fish and a tomato and just simply taking a gene from a fish that allows them to decompose slower and incorporating that into a tomato. This education will remove the ignorance, and as Yoda once said, ignorance leads to fear. Once education is increased, the fear will be removed and people can simply observe the scientific facts. The second part is also simple. Increase funding and awareness for humanitarian GMOs, such as those that provide micronutrients and vaccines. Through this, we will both do a great service for the world by giving people who cannot get vaccines and food by themselves easily a way to get these things, and we will also increase public opinions of GM food by showing people what GMOs are doing for the world. As people see the wonders GMOs can do, trust will build, and the created fear will slowly dissolve away. Once education is increased and this is done, the only thing remaining to do is clean house. Although the vast majority of GMOs are undeniably safe, there is one outlier: Monsanto's infamous Roundup Ready crops. Since GMO global position is so tentative, although there is no conclusive evidence that Monsanto's products are dangerous, there is also no conclusive evidence that Roundup is safe. Because of this, combined with Monsanto's flagrant immoral abuse of patent law to screw over small-time farmers, we give anti-GMO activists a foothold to use against the GMO community. To prevent this and make the pro-GMO evidence ironclad, there needs to be legislation specifically placed against companies like Monsanto, both forcing them to prove their GMO safety and preventing their flagrant abuse of patent law. Through this, funding of humanitarian GMOs and increasing education, we can strike out the anti-GMO movement once and for all, helping us technologically advance our agriculture safely, humanely, and for the benefit of us all.